Hello and welcome to the VooPlayer Q&A weekly webinar call. We're going to get started here in just a minute, but before we do, if you'll be so kind as to confirm that you can both hear my voice as well as see my screen, which should say VooPlayer Q&A on it, and then we can get started. Thank you. All right, excellent. We're getting some confirmations. Hello, Dean. Hello, Dave. So we can get started. So once again, this is the Q&A session, the purpose of which is to answer any questions that you as users may have, also to provide any training on any advanced feature, also to cover use cases, which might help you integrate VooPlayer and video in your business efforts, as well as to gather feedback from you guys on how we can improve VooPlayer and also to showcase any new stuff that we've been working on. The format of the webinar is pretty straightforward, so at any time that you have a question, just feel free to drop it in the chat box and we'll just answer them in the order that they come in. The webinar replays are available both on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/channel VooPlayer, as well as on our Facebook group. So if you're unable to attend any of these webinars, there you can find the replays, or also ask questions which you would like to have answered in the following webinar. All right. My name is Peter. I am VooPlayer's product manager. So I think we can get started. I think I covered all of the housekeeping stuff. All right, great. So I just have a couple of announcements before getting to your questions. So the first announcement I wanted to cover, and some of you might have already seen this on our YouTube channel. So the Dean is saying that my audio is fading in and out. Hopefully it's better. So the first thing that I want to talk about is with regards to the new privacy laws that came out in Europe and are affecting everybody who has customers in Europe and in the internet world. That's usually everyone. We want to allow you to be able to comply with those privacy rules a little bit better. So what we've, in addition to previously I mentioned, we've integrated the ability for you to delete all of the user data associated with a particular email or a particular user IP address. Now we're also adding the ability for you to ask for direct consent to signing up to an email list. So we can consider this as a double opt-in of sorts, if you will. So it's a two-step process which allows you to, well, actually, let me show you how it looks like first, and then I can show you how it's set up. So here we're going to have an opt-in come up in the video. So we have an opt-in and it looks like a regular opt-in, but now, and this is completely optional, you can specify additional consent. It seems like people are having audio issues from what I'm seeing in the comments. So if I can just get a confirmation that the audio is okay. Is audio okay? And then we can continue. I have a couple of comments saying that audio is fading out. Luce is saying that it's fine. All right. Hello, Thebe. Welcome. Everybody's home. All right. So as I mentioned, now you optionally have the ability to specify additional consent text, as well as the ability to specify terms and conditions which the user needs to okay to agree on before they can verify the opt-in itself. So this gives you the ability to comply with those data protection and privacy protection rules a little bit better by adding a second step to the opt-in process, and that's available on different opt-in styles and templates. So the way that you can integrate this, if you want to comply with those rules, basically what you need to do is when creating a new opt-in, There's a checkbox, newly added checkbox, which asks for opt-in consent. And if you turn that on, then you're able to specify the consent text, which is that big scrolling box in which you can enter anything, as well as a label for the terms to be agreed on, as well as the URL where you want that link to take them if you want to take a link to the full terms and conditions or a privacy policy. So this again, as I mentioned, is a part of the ongoing efforts to allow you to comply better with GDPR as well as other privacy protection rules, and we'll update all of this information on our GDP article today or tomorrow probably, so you can have a reference point for it there. While I'm talking about it, a couple of things that are still kind of outstanding on that GDPR that we're working on, in case you're curious, are the ability to have a agreement stating what data and how it's being stored and for what purposes it's being used. So we're putting together a little legal document for third-party providers that are collecting data on your behalf from your users. So we'll also have that available pretty soon on that article, which kind of brings us in a full circle of GDPR compliance to our rest. So hopefully that's going to be of great use to you guys who are concerned with those privacy protection laws. And a lot of people who are operating their businesses in Europe can't proceed without that. So that's one of the reasons why we've prioritized this. All right, so what else did I want to talk about? Also wanted to circle back on the markers. We've continued work on the video markers, which will include a lot of enhancements, both from display of markers as well as the annotations, allowing you to specify additional content that accompanies individual markers, as well as there's going to be a little menu, sort of like a playlist, that's going to open up and specify those individual markers in the video with an ability for users to kind of interact with those markers, and then that's going to take them to different points in the video. So I think by the next webinar call on Tuesday, the following Tuesday, I'm going to have a little demo for you guys prepared, so you can see that in action. Most of that is already done, but we're just going to put in some finishing functionality touches on that. So I think if not even rolled out by next week, we'll at least have a functioning demo of that. All right, that's a couple of things that I wanted to focus on and cover, just so you guys are updated. Aside from that, we can get to questions. So let me just see if there's been any in the meantime. I don't see any questions. So if you folks have any questions, now would be a good time to ask them, or any ideas on how we can improve WooPlayer, or just some problems you're facing in general that you think we can help you out with and make WooPlayer a little bit more easier to use. Anything. So Lewis is saying, I tried out the new download feature. I think, assuming it has now been updated, I found in Google Chrome it opens a temp tab that closes again, and then it works fine. However, in Firefox and Opera, it did not work at all, and in Safari, it downloaded an HTML file. The Wistia download option equivalent works fine with all of these browsers. That is very possible. When we were developing that, we were testing exclusively in Chrome. We didn't, and we should have. So fault on our end. We should have tested in other browsers as well. So we'll give that a go and figure out a way for it to work in those other browsers as well. Thanks for bringing up that comment, Lewis. Let me actually make a quick note of that, so we can make it into an actionable item right away. If you will just give me 1 second, just so I don't lose track of it. So feedback from Lewis. on the downloads. All right, cool. Thanks again, Lewis. Is it possible to clone a whole group of videos at once instead of one by one? Cloning a video group. Oh, let me just think here for a second. So I think my answer is going to be yes, not currently, but I think it's something that we can do. So let me just think about it just for a second. So the way that I'm seeing this work is if in the groups list you had sort of a master check button, which would in turn, if that's checked, would select all of the videos in that group. So hopefully that's kind of making sense. So if you were able to, let's say, just select this group, and then that selects all of these 6 videos, so that would be able to work, and then you can just select the clone option from there. I think that would be feasible. I think we can manage that. Yeah, and I see directly what the value benefit of that is, since from what I know currently, you're not able to clone videos 2 or 3 at a time. You need to do it individually for each video you want to clone. So it will be beneficial definitely if you can do sort of multiple clones. So let me just make a note of that as well. So that's from Dave. So how will this work? This will work by selecting entire group and adding multiple clone option. Let me just make a note of that. Great. Playlist auto hide when user press play. Any update on that? No updates on that. That's still in the backlog. Haven't started working on it yet. Lewis, problem with overlays which are placed in the lower part of the player screen, and helpful screenshot. Let us take a look at that. Just open it up. So I'm just going to drag it over here. All right. So the problem with the overlays which are in the bottom portions of the screen is that the controls are overlapping them. I don't necessarily see that as a problem if the issue is just the control bar overlapping it, because the way that we're looking at it, at least, is the overlays are the layer above the video source, whereas the controls are the topmost layer. So if you wanted to have overlays over controls, that would just not work, because obviously what would happen then is, in this instance, you would not have the controls available at all if this was overlapping this. So one thing that kind of comes to mind, and it's going to sound like a small thing, but it's not at all, would be the ability to have the controls outside of the player, so to speak. So whereas the video itself, which was, let's say, 16:9 ratio, would stay as is, but the controls would just be sort of appended to the bottom of it. Currently, all Wool Player controls are the part of the video itself and are never outside of the video container. So it's a pretty big change, even though it might sound small, just in the way in which all of this works. But I see where the point is with regards to this sort of not being able to function perfectly one way or another. So Lewis is additionally saying, or split the sectors above the control panel. Yes, but then you're running into, what if somebody really wants it in the top in the bottom right corner, and they want to hide all of the controls. So you have people who are creating videos, and then they come to the video and then they say, all right, hide all of the player controls so that none of them are visible, and then just have a overlay in the top bottom corner, and they do it like that. So you have a lot of conflicting interests and how you best want to utilize this. But I guess if one thing that I would suggest, if you want to utilize overlays in the bottom third of your videos, then I would take the control into consideration. And what I would do is I would make that control half transparent, meaning that you would still be able to see the overlays behind it. One of the things that could improve sort of the interaction with this is us being somewhat smart about overlay interactions. And so, for example, because in this type of a scenario, obviously I would never be able, I'm looking at the bottom right screenshot, I will never be able to click on the Learn More button. What we can do is add some sort of smart recognition of user interaction. So if somebody is interacting with this overlay either by hovering over it or by clicking on the top text, for example, we could just by default just hide all of the controls and allow people to interact with the overlay fully. So we have kind of a discussion developing on this. So I think Lewis maybe is suggesting that you move the overlay just a little above the control. Again, and I said that's perfectly feasible, but then you're running into conflicts with people who actually want it to be at the very bottom. And that's not a small portion of people, because a lot of people, as I mentioned, are hiding controls, all of the controls or some of the controls, and definitely need it to be in the top bottom corners, or at the center in the bottom. I mean, we can escalate this discussion throughout other Wool Player features. So the same thing is going to happen if you position your logo, for example, and you make your logo clickable and you put it in the bottom right corner. It's going to be the same issue is going to happen. Or if you have a regular opt-in box which has a lot of content and you place it so it takes up the full width of the right hand side, then the bottom portion of it is not going to be you can't interact with it. So I see where the issue is. So I just want to thank you for bringing it up, Lewis, so that we can consider it a little bit more. But one of the things that I definitely think is sort of the right thing to do is you guys as users need to take into account what kind of overlays you're creating and how they're behaving as a whole part of the video, and with that take the controls into consideration. So if you believe that controls will be visible, and just a reminder, they are hidden after a few seconds of user not interacting with the video. So if you believe that controls are going to be visible, do make them slightly transparent or even more transparent than this, so that people can see what's behind them. And additionally, on our end, I believe we can be a little bit smarter with those interactions by saying, hey, if somebody wants to interact with an overlay, if we get a clear indication of that, either by hovering or something like that, then we can just minimize the controls until they're finished interacting with that overlay. I can't say that I have the best answer for this scenario just yet. I need to kind of walk through it in a little bit more detail, because, as I mentioned, there's not necessarily an easy solution for this. I mean, a possible solution could be, hey, I want the controls to be on the top, for example. That might work for some people. So I don't necessarily want to identify the solution just yet. I just want to thank you for bringing up this feedback, as I think it's a valid concern, but there's not necessarily a very easy solution to it. How about an option slider? an option slider. What's an option slider? Like an option slider as if you do want the bottom to be above the controls. That's also one of the things that came to my mind, but I just thought it would just be sort of an overkill, but definitely something that we could consider. So let me just note some of these things. So first we have the idea for the, all right, and that's from Lewis. So that's the problem with overlays. All right, and then we have the idea for moving the bottom to be above the controls. That's from Thebe, and control can auto hide. That depends on when you set the overlay to start end. That's a good point as well. I missed that. All right, cool. All right, again, thanks. And I'll think about it, and we'll circle back to this next week. Let's see, I missed some things in the midst of this discussion. William is saying, can this consent feature be applied before viewers continue to a content, let's say on the first time watching the video? So that's not necessarily a question that's regarding the consent feature, because I guess what you're asking actually, can the opt-in box be shown only when somebody watches the video for the first time? Is that the correct assumption, that you would actually want to do that rather than control the consent? Because if we are taking as an assumption that the consenting without an opt-in, I just saw that point as well. So that confused me for a second, because one of the things that we've had a lot of feedback on is, hey, I have a video on my site and it asks for an opt-in, and that's great. I'm capturing an email lead. And then what happens is a person comes to watch that video a second time, and I'm spamming them by asking for an email again. And you're going to run into those types of scenarios. And we kind of have a solution for that, but now that you said, William, consenting without an opt-in is an interesting point, and I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean by that. But maybe you can kind of provide a description of that use case and how that will be of value to you, and just send it over to me via the regular encrypted channels, and then we can kind of develop a conversation from there onwards. I would really need to understand how consenting to something without opting into something would be useful, and what would you do with that consent. Lewis is also saying, I'm still not sure how safe it is to use any player skin apart from the default without others having some sort of a glitch sooner rather than later. It's not. My recommendation there stays valid. Using the default Wool player skin is the way to go, and we consider it to be the most optimal way for anything. The YouTube, really, the reason for using the YouTube, Facebook, and I believe we have Twitter skins is nothing more than a gimmicky way of trying to show to your users that you have a player which is on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, and there's no reason for you to do that. And I mean, even if we just take into consideration how often those skins are actually updated by the what did I want to say, by their respected sites. So a Facebook skin, a Facebook video skin changes every day. So us being able to kind of keep track with that is nearly impossible. So the appearance of them is just gonna be outdated. So there's nothing that's sort of preventing you from replicating the exact skin you want with the default settings. So from if anything, what this discussion has motivated me to do is to remove all of these. So Facebook skin, YouTube skin, and Twitter skin. From at least what I want to do is basically I will just delete them all and just not have them be offered in the application anymore, and I will just have the default skin available within the application. And I think that since there's just so much you can do with it, and it works really well in all types of different contexts, and it's optimized for mobile display the most. Again, Louis, I'm gonna go against my good sense and just say consider Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter skins as non-existent. So for example, let's take the Twitter skin. So if I wanted to have a skin which actually looks like this, there's nothing preventing me from creating it with the default skin. So I'm just gonna switch back to default, and let's say, all right, I don't. Twitter has the rounded controls, so I'll switch back from modern to the traditional, which is the rounded, and then they don't have the background for the controls; they just have the control icons. So I'll actually go ahead and eliminate those controls by that background by setting a transparent background, and they have, I don't know, the blue. What do you call it? The blue bars for signifying it's Twitter, and there I have the Twitter control there. So that's kind of what I mean by you being able to kind of customize the default to look like Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. William, looking forward to that conversation. Louis is saying, just nice to have different skins, don't necessarily have to be tied to being Facebook, Twitter, etc. And that's exactly my point. So if you spend a little time playing with these different skins, you can literally save them as themes. So if I just want to, I'll make this a little bit prettier because I don't necessarily like how it looks, so I'll give it a little bit of background, something like this maybe, so it's a little bit more prominent, and I'll give let's just save it as that. I can save that as my Twitter skin template or theme rather, and I'll just save it, and then from that point onwards that's always going to be available as the Twitter skin, which I can just apply by a click of the button and just switch from different skins very easily. As you can see, I have several saved themes which I'm regularly using. So for example, I have this full player light skin, and I have this full player dark skin, and Winter Nights Aurora. I don't know why I created that, but I have that available as well. So it's really up to you to kind of create those templates based on your preferences of colors and your branding, but we can definitely come up with some sort of a template, some templates to allow you to have some quick, accessible themes which you can kind of replicate off of. Could we have a rectangle play arrow in the default skin then as an example? Rectangle play arrow in the default skin. Yeah, I just showed you that. So I'm on the default skin, and all I'm going to do here is just switch from traditional controls type to the modern controls type. So this is using the default skin, but it's using the modern style, and this is what it kind of looks like. So you have the rectangle play arrow. I think that's what you were referring to, I think. So hopefully that answers that question, if that's what you're kind of trying to achieve. So just switching from traditional to modern will do the trick, and then you can save that theme or even make that theme as your default. So for all of the next videos which you create, it's just automatically going to have that theme. So hopefully that answers that question. If anything is left unanswered about that, feel free also to reach out through the support channel so that we can have that discussion escalate a bit further and find out other potential solutions which might work better. What about changing the size of the playhead? That's one of the things that we've considered, but are not fully ready to even go down that path, because the controls themselves need to be adjustable based on the size of the screen on which the viewer is viewing it. So then, in addition to those adaptable sizes of the controls, as you can see, so let me just show you an example of that real quick. So let me just save this, what I did here, and then I'll go ahead and watch this video. So just to give you a little bit of insight into the sizing of those controls. So if I just play it at this size, you can see what the size of the controls is currently. Whereas if I resize it a little bit, you'll notice that all of those controls, as well as the play button, is a bit different. And then if I go into full screen, then you'll see that those controls really become a little bit different. So all of those controls are very, very much controlled differently by the screen side as well. And then in addition to that, being able to say, hey, I want large or small controls, I think we have currently 4 or 5 breakpoints, and then in addition to that, large, small, medium option, we would need to have 15. So basically, no, not yet. We sort of take charge on that and determine what's the appropriate size of the controls for each screen size. All right, we ran a bit over time, so I'll need to start wrapping this up. I want to thank you, everybody, for joining this call and for your valuable feedback. A lot of good points today, and a lot of them will help us improve WooPlayer. No need to apologize, Louis. Very, very productive points of feedback. Thank you, especially for bringing them up, as they will help us improve WooPlayer for other users. So hopefully you'll join next week when we can continue these discussions, or circle back on some of the points which were made today, and also review some of the new stuff that's going on. So thank you, everybody, and until next week, bye.